Hi, my name is Heather Horsham Coleman, and this is Rolling with Jesus. This week you get to see my face. I don't know if that's good or bad thing, but it is what it is. Over the course of the week I was thinking and praying about what my next episode should be, and instead of writing stories, God put it on my heart to read stories from every book of the Bible. So this week we're going to start with Genesis and the covenant that God had with Abraham and Sarah. I mentioned Sarah because I think at some point she had to agree to it too, otherwise we wouldn't be where we are today. Anyways, the actual story of the Abrahamic covenant takes place between chapter 12 and 21 of Genesis. Obviously, we're not gonna read the whole thing, but I took excerpts from chapter 12 and 15 and 18 and then 21. I'll do my best to summarize what happens in between those things. But we're gonna start.
Now the Lord said to Abram, Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to go to the land of Canaan.
That's from Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 5. And then I also wrote Abram and his nephew Lot had a disagreement, and his nephew Lot moved away. But then he got into some trouble and needed his uncle to rescue him. That's from 16. It's a very short, 13. That's a very short summary of Genesis 13. And then I will read it again.
After these things the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, Fear not, Abram, I am your shield, your reward shall be very great.
And that comes from Genesis 15. He goes on to say,
And Abram said, Behold, you have given me no offspring, and a member of my household will be my heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, This man shall not be your heir, your very own son shall be your heir. And he brought him outside and said, Look toward heaven, and number the stars, if you are able to number them. Then he said to him, So shall your offspring be. And he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness. And he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out from Ur of the Chaldeans, to give you this land to possess. But he said, O Lord God, how am I to know that I shall possess it?
And that is from Genesis 15, 3 through 8. And then there was a lot of burnt offerings and animal offerings. And I know that when we come from a very modern age that doesn't do those things anymore, we don't understand it. But from what I've researched, it was more like a contract. And to show the individual that this was going to happen if they presented some sort of offering, much like we sign a contract to get something fixed in our house. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyway, moving on, it says, after all the things with the animal offerings, then we read again in Genesis 15. It says,
When the sun had gone down and it was dark, behold, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, To your offspring I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. Genesis 15 verses 17 to 18 ESV.
this is important because he's not only saying that he will have an offspring to help populate the earth and the country, but he will be given land. So the covenant is now divided into two promises and will eventually get to 4. And that's from Genesis 15, 17 through 18. And then I'm just gonna summarize 16. Basically, when Abram told his wife Sarah that all these things were gonna happen, she said, how is it gonna happen? I'm old, we're old, so let's get Sarah her name's Hagar, and she will produce a biological son for you. But again, she didn't ask the Lord permission or ask if this was part of God's plan. They just kind of did it, kind of like we all just take things into our own hands when we get impatient. So then into 17, God says, hold up, Abram and Sarai. The covenant was with you, not with other people. So that was my very odd paraphrasing. So I'm gonna start to read the word again. It says,
Behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you into nations, and kings shall come from you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your offspring after you. And I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God.
That comes from Genesis 17:4-8. So in this little section, God is saying, I'm gonna change your name, which was part of his covenant and promises way back in Genesis chapter 12. So now we have the promise to make him a great nation, to change his name, and to give him an offspring so that he can rule many nations. And somewhere off in there was the promise to give him and generations after him, but it's not the land. So the promise actually has 4 parts to it. So let's move on. It says,
And God said to Abraham, As for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name.
and that's from Genesis 17, verse 15. And then Abraham says, You've got to be kidding me. And he laughed and laughed and laughed because, again, he realizes they're old and they're not biologically equipped for all this to happen.
Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said to himself, Shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? God said, No, but Sarah your wife shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. Genesis 17 verses 17 and 19, 21 ESV.
This time next year, remember back in 16, it said that Sarah and Abraham had made a plan for Haggai to be a surrogate. Well, because of that, I don't know why they had Ishmael. But in 17, God is restating the fact that his covenant shall be between Abraham and Isaac and Sarah, not Ishmael. But he does promise Ishmael his own people and his own nation. It's just not part of this covenant or this contract. Anyway, what I just read about Sarah giving birth to a son named Isaac is from Genesis 17 verses 17, 19, and 21. We skipped to 18, where the angels come to Abraham and Sarah to tell Sarah But this is what's gonna happen. It says,
They said to him, "Where is Sarah your wife?" And he said, "She is in the tent." The Lord said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife shall have a son." And Sarah was listening at the tent door behind him.
she was eavesdropping. Actually, that's what she was doing. From the tent. Because prior to this, Abraham said, hurry up, we have company that have come, so make dinner, please." There's a big, long section of the Bible that I just modernized and summarized, but that's what she was doing in the tent. She was making dinner for Abraham and these angels, or these men that told her what was gonna happen. So she was listening and eavesdropping to all this. And Sarah was listening at the tent door behind him. Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child?'" She was like, "Ha ha, it's not gonna happen." And then when God asked her about it, and Abraham asked her about it, she tried to cover her face. She tried to cover up her actions and said, I did not. She denied the whole thing. But God always knows. Anyway, that's from Genesis 18:9 through 13. And then here's my favorite part of this whole story. When you go down in 18, you almost miss it. But it says,
"Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you."
again, they're reiterating it's going to happen next year, just in case they didn't get it.
"About this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son." Genesis 18 verse 14 ESV.
That's from 18:14. And then in chapter 19 and 20, there's a lot of drama with Lot and his family. That is a whole little side SABA that doesn't have anything to do with the Abrahamic covenant. But because of their sin, there was the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, which is very interesting and should be on an episode of CSI or something like that. I don't even know if CSI exists anymore. In chapter 21, God says, "Hello, amongst all this drama, remember what I told you. You will get pregnant and have a son just as I promised." And again, I'm paraphrasing this to the Heather version of the Bible. But the part I want to read to you. He's down here. It says, Abraham called the name of his son, who was born to him through Sarah, Isaac. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born to him. Okay. So, I would like to end with these questions that I hope that you wrestle with throughout the week or coming weeks. And I want to know your feedback and comments and some of your answers to these questions. What are some promises that God has given you? Who is who, or what is your Isaac? What is the thing that God has promised you that He can use to get? Because remember that Abraham was almost 80 years old when he had this conversation with God about a great nation and its name changing and all this land and all the descendants. But it took over 20 years for this to happen. So what are things that you're waiting for God to fulfill? Waiting for some of God's promises? The next question: if the covenant with Abraham and Sarah started when he was in his 80s and they had Isaac at 100, then what are you doing for the Lord despite your age or physical condition? If Abraham if Abraham completed his part of the covenant at 100, then what's your excuse for not doing things for the Lord? And my last question goes back to Genesis 18:14 that says, it literally says this in the Bible. I highlighted it in blue instead of red because it convicted me. Maybe it won't convict you, but maybe it'll challenge you. It says, is there anything too difficult for the Lord? And that's all I have this week. I promise next week will be shorter and we'll cover a story from Exodus. I don't know what that will be yet. If you have any ideas, send me an email at rolling.w.jesus@gmail.com or leave a comment in the comment section. However that works, I'm still getting used to it. Anyway, see you next week. Bye.